The movie begins late at night in a business center, where businessman Maurice is working in an office late at night. He looks at a letter with a strange seal, but he had to continue working. The letter remained unread. Suddenly, the hero begins to feel pain in the chest, drinks a glass of water and then falls to the ground and dies. The film's protagonist, Lockhart, a rookie financier, is traveling through the beautiful Swiss countryside by train, actively solving work issues over the phone, when his attention is drawn to a letter, the same as the one Maurice received at the beginning of the film. The letter contains a strange message from Pembroke, the CEO of the financial company where Lockhart works, who writes that he has decided to quit the business. Gathered at a meeting, his colleagues believe that Pembroke is out of his mind, and they can be understood, because the letter is really strange. A man goes for 2 weeks to be treated by the waters and breaks down. However, the company is extremely important for the upcoming deal. After all, the merger will make the company the most powerful financial services firm on the East Coast. Lockhart is facing charges of financial fraud and is threatened with imprisonment, but he believes that this is not the case. It is more likely to be something more extensive. The board of directors instructs him to travel to Switzerland and bring Mr. Pembroke back. So Lockhart takes a train to Switzerland. A taxi driver takes Lockhart to a sanatorium on top of a mountain. On the way, the driver tells him that every week he picks up rich people from the train and takes them to the mountain where they stay. During the trip, Lockhart is transported to the day before he left. He was visiting his mother in a nursing home. She believes that her son will not return from the trip, but Lockhart promises to return and move her to a better place, closer to the sea. The mother gives him a ballerina figurine, which she considers special, and says goodbye to him. The driver tells the hero that the villagers have never liked those who live on the mountain because of the history of the sanatorium. Arriving at the mountain, they are greeted by a gate with 2 wheels intertwined with each other. Everything looks eerie. The sanatorium is located on the territory of the castle, which was built in the time of the barons. The story goes that the last baron was so obsessed with blood purity that only his own sister was worthy to give birth to his child. Since the church forbade him to marry, he renounced God. When the peasants found out, they drove the baron and the girl into the catacombs and forced them to watch them burn alive, and then they burned the castle. They arrive at the castle grounds, and the protagonist sees people in white clothes relaxing in the open air. Lockhart enters the castle, but when he finds out that the visits are over for the day, he asks to make an exception for him, but is refused. So Lockhart asks to call the administrator. He tries to call the office, but there is no network. He walks around the castle grounds and suddenly comes across a ventilation window to the basement of the old chapel. Finally, he gets to the administrator, who again tells him that visiting hours are closed for the day. But Lockhart asks for an exception because Pembroke is the director of a large company and the matter is extremely important. At the same time, he is looking at various photos on the wall in his office, and an old photo of a castle catches his attention. The administrator gives the protagonist a drink of water. Lockhart insists that Pembroke be informed of his visit, reminding him that he has traveled 6,000 miles for this. He hopes to catch the evening flight to New York. The receptionist suggests that he come back after 7 p.m., when Pembroke is free after his procedures. Lockhart drinks a glass of water and leaves the castle, heading for the hotel, where he plans to make a call to his colleagues. As he leaves the grounds, he notices a girl standing on the castle wall in a white dress. On the way back, a deer crashes into Lockhart's car. As a result, Lockhart ends up in a sanatorium, where he lies unconscious for 3 days. He sees a cast on his leg, and the doctor informs him that he has alerted the management of the company he works for about the incident. Lockhart drinks the water the nurse gave him again, on the doctor's recommendation. Looking out the window, he sees that the window to the basement, which he had seen on the first day, is being bricked up. When he finished the water, he saw something in the glass, which turned out to be a bug. Lockhart wandered around the sanatorium and watched the patients doing different procedures. He met a nice employee who invited him to the steam room for a treatment. Everything looked quite familiar, but after a few moments he got lost in the steam and realized that the exit behind him had disappeared. However, a moment later the exit reappeared and he saw a deer. Lockhart followed it and found Pembroke. The young man talks about his intentions to return Pembroke to New York. However, he refuses, stating that he does not want to leave treatment. Pembroke behaves extremely strangely, saying that Lockhart will soon understand everything. Pembroke assures him that the director of the sanatorium asked him not to get involved in business matters. Suddenly, Pembroke remembers Lockhart's father and how they started a business together a long time ago. When Lockhart was a child, his father committed suicide by jumping off a bridge in front of him. Pembroke believes that the young man's father was the first to realize the meaninglessness of the whole plan of life. Suddenly, he agreed to go with Lockhart for a few days, but declared his intention to continue treatment later. The young man asked the nurse to call a taxi, and while waiting outside for the car, he was approached by a patient, Mrs. Watkins, who is researching the history of the castle. They talk about the legend that the driver told Lockhart. The hero again saw the same girl he saw on the first day. A girl in a white dress. Her name is Hannah. She was a special patient. She was the only one who was not allowed to drink the water that all the patients were treated with. The young man tells her that he will soon leave this place, and the girl asks him why he is leaving. Looking at the beauty of this place, Lockhart thought about it. When he returned to the sanatorium, he saw that no one was there. He went in search of Pembroke, but could not find him. When he went to the dining room, he found a doctor who said that Pembroke had taken a turn for the worse after talking to the young man and was sent for treatment. Lockhart was beside himself with anger, but at one point his nose started to bleed and he suddenly lost consciousness. He wakes up when the head doctor is examining him, and he suggests that he undergo treatment because his vitals are poor for such a young age, and Lockhart eventually agrees. Lockhart saw a photo of Hannah and started asking the doctor about her, to which he said that she was a special patient. She was like a daughter to him. As soon as the doctor left the office, the guy started looking for Pembroke's medical records and steals them. The hero was asked to take tests to monitor the changes. When he brought a vessel with a liquid, he saw on the shelf that in addition to the liquid in the jar there was something foreign, similar to parasites. Lockhart's first procedure was immersion in water. He was warned about possible hallucinations. Floating in the liquid, the hero recalled his childhood, the day his father committed suicide. Suddenly he saw a lot of eels in the water. He tried to reach out to the worker, but he was distracted. Trying to swim up, Lockhart lost his oxygen hose and suffocated. Having lost his pulse, he saw the scene of his father's suicide again. Suddenly, he was pulled out of the water and pumped out. Lockhart said that something was floating in the water, but when they looked into the water, they found nothing. In the ward, the young man was studying Pembroke's medical records, and his attention was drawn to the jaw scans, which were strange. However, at the same moment, a sound from the bathroom caught his attention. The handle of the toilet was moving, and suddenly he noticed someone being taken to the chapel through the window. The next morning, Lockhart talks to Mrs. Watkins, who tells him that the villagers burned the castle for a different reason, which was actually medical experimentation on people. People would disappear, and then the villagers would find dead, desiccated human bodies. Lockhart suspects that the Baron was looking for a cure for the Baroness. A worker overheard their conversation and Mrs. Watkins was immediately taken away for treatment. The hero decided to check the entrance door to the tower, but was chased away by an employee. There Lockhart met Hannah, and he asks her about the village he finds at the foot of the mountain. He asks the girl to give him a ride on her bicycle, but she refuses, because they are forbidden to leave the territory. The hero persuades Hannah by giving her a ballerina figurine he received from his mother. Together they ride their bikes to the village. There they go to a pub and Lockhart buys them a drink. Then he asks the employee about a veterinarian. He rushes to him. The girl is left alone in the pub. At the vet, Lockhart learns that Pembroke's tooth loss is due to dehydration. This seems strange, because everyone in the sanatorium drinks a lot of water. Back at the pub, Lockhart manages to get through to the company's office. As it turns out, his colleagues were not warned about the accident. It also turns out that Pembroke was perfectly healthy before the trip. After finishing the call, he decides to talk to Hannah about why she is special, but the girl is taken by a local pink. He starts a fight with the protagonist. The fight is interrupted by a visit from Dr. Vollmer, who takes Hannah away. Lockhart is also taken to a sanatorium. When Dr. Vollmer returns home, he almost quarrels with Hannah because she says she doesn't need protection. Suddenly, Hannah feels a sharp pain in her stomach, and the doctor wants to help her, but Hannah forbids him to touch her. Lockhart dreams of a naked Hannah in a bathtub filled with acne. He wakes up from his nightmares and decides to get a drink of water when he notices a worker wheeling an empty gurney out of the basement through the window. His attention is drawn to the sound from the bathroom, the sounds coming from the cistern again. Looking in the mirror, he notices a loose tooth, and the hero effortlessly pulls it out. Frightened, he went to the nurse to report the problem. When she went to fetch the doctor, he noticed the location of Pembroke's procedures in the log. The hero heads there, trying not to bump into the staff. While the workers are distracted by the scream of a patient lying on the couch, Lockhart heads to the floor where Pembroke is supposed to be. Wandering among the rooms with borrowed chambers, he finds Mrs. Watkins, who tells him that she left him clues. She also told him that the Baroness was pregnant. The baby was cut out of her stomach and thrown into the lake, but the child survived. When he notices parasites under Mrs. Watkins' skin, the hero gets scared and accidentally knocks over a rack of glass containers. Employees come to the sound. Hiding from them, Lockhart lights a cigarette, and the flame of the lighter makes him realize that this is an unusual room. There are many tanks with people in them, and among them he finds Pembroke. He tries to break the glass of the tank to take Pembroke away, but nothing happens. The boy goes up the stairs but runs into Dr. Vollmer. He is taken to have his teeth examined, but after tying him to a chair, his front tooth is drilled out. At that time, another rich woman arrived at the sanatorium. Suddenly, Lockhart runs into the car and asks the driver to take him away. They immediately started driving. The driver took the hero to the local police where Lockhart shared the horrors that had been done to them in the sanatorium. Having assured the young man that they will help him, when the police officer leaves, Lockhart notices a jar of vitamins that all the employees of the sanatorium drink. At that moment, a policeman entered the office, but he came with Dr. Vollmer. He claims that Lockhart is simply out of it. He says Lockhart is a patient of the sanatorium suffering from hallucinations. Later, Pembroke enters the office, claiming that Lockhart has been threatening him. Seeing Pembroke alive, Lockhart begins to doubt himself. He is returned to the sanatorium. There he considers the clues from Mrs. Watkins. His attention is once again drawn to the sound from the bathroom. This time, he decides to look under the lid of the toilet. There he sees a mass of live eels, which disappeared in a flash. He breaks the toilet to check where they went. However, he does not find them there. Lockhart writes a letter to the board of directors, accusing them of sending him there on purpose to take a man against his will. His letter is very similar to Pembroke's letter that the board of directors received before Lockhart's trip. He admits to being sick. Suddenly he pours water and breaks a glass, and with the shard he cuts the cast. His leg is completely healthy. Lockhart decides to go to the basement of the chapel. Inside, he sees a lake, and as he walks further, he notices an old laboratory. On the tables are many studies on eels, alcoholized eels, and deformed human embryos. He also notices a place with a portrait of a baroness who looks very much like Hannah. At that time, Hannah, having painted her lips, enters the pool, suddenly bleeding, and acne appears through the holes in the walls, surrounding the frightened Hannah. Lockhart, wandering through the basement, finds a gurney with a person covered with a sheet, who turns out to be Mrs. Watkins. Suddenly, a worker enters the basement, and while Lockhart hides, he sees the worker throwing the human body into the water. In the water, many eels instantly appear and drink the blood from the body. The worker notices Lockhart, and a fight breaks out between them. Lockhart fights off the employee and escapes, returning to the sanatorium where he meets a frightened Hannah. He tells her that they need to escape, but Hannah pinches him in the face and runs away. She runs to the dining room where she finds Dr. Vollmer, who smiles when he sees her covered in blood. Suddenly, Lockhart appears and tells all the patients what they are really doing to them in the sanatorium. Hoping that they will return to their senses, he expects support, but he was wrong. They all rush to him. Lockhart regains consciousness while being taken to the transfusion department and is placed in a barricader. There he meets Pembroke, who assures him that he feels fine. At that moment, Dr. Vollmer appears and tells Lockhart the whole truth, saying that the water in the lake allows eels to live for 300 years. But this water is toxic to humans, and it needs to be filtered. As it turns out, the human body is the filter for this water, receiving the vitamins that Dr. Vollmer himself and Hannah and other important people in the sanatorium drank. Lockhart becomes the same filter for this water, and Vollmer tells Lockhart that people don't leave here. Vollmer runs the water with the eels into Lockhart's body. Vollmer gives an address, telling her that she is now a woman, something he has been waiting for many years. The doctor gives her vitamins from a blue bottle, and it goes to the park where Lockhart was. She returns the ballerina to him, saying that he disappointed her by giving her hope that she could escape. After the procedures, Lockhart was not himself. He didn't understand why they had to leave, because it was so beautiful there. That evening, a wedding ceremony for Dr. Vollmer and Anna took place in the sanatorium while all the patients were resting. While everyone was resting, Vollmer took Anna to the basement chapel. There was the same laboratory and bed where Vollmer thought they would conceive a child. Hannah refuses, but the doctor ties her up. Hannah hits Vollmer, leaving a mark on his forehead. Meanwhile, Lockhart, looking at the ballerina, comes to his senses. Putting together all the clues Mrs. Watkins had given him, he comes to the conclusion that Dr. Vollmer is the Baron. So, it was he who was looking for a cure for aging, and Anna was his daughter. Later, Lockhart runs into the basement, where there is an underground lake. He pours gasoline into it, but Vollmer tries to stop him. Vollmer's mask falls off, revealing his burned face. Lockhart manages to start a fire. Through the ventilation system, the fire spreads inside the sanatorium, and a fire breaks out. Lockhart and Vollmer fight, and the doctor almost throws Lockhart into the lake. Suddenly Anna appears and hits Vollmer in the face with a shovel. After escaping from the basement, Lockhart and Anna watch the fire burn around them while the patients continue to dance in the sanatorium. After that, they ride their bikes together to the village. They crash into a car carrying the company's board of directors. Lockhart ignores their orders and instead he and Anna ride away on their bikes. The movie ends with Lockhart's crazy smile. Our summary of the movie comes to an end here. Don't forget to subscribe on our channel. See you in the next video. Love you.